Patiently waiting for us is Dr. Malhotra from the Henry Ford Hospital. He is the Chief Medical Officer at Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. And I think I can punch him up here in just a minute. It's a lot of buttons to hit here, Doctor. There we go. We have you on our screen via Zoom. Thank you for joining us today in the Megacast. And how you feeling?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you're doing well. You know, I hope your heart is warmed as ours has been by the outpouring of public support for all of you on the front line.
Oh, absolutely. I think that that's meant the world to the people who are on the front lines, really taking the risk every day to make sure that they keep our communities safe. I'll remind you, these are the same people that take some degree of risk every day and have been doing so for years. It's really great to see the community really come out and recognize these people. They
Well,
really do.
and just one other thing, I was talking earlier to a pilot who is a group of pilots here in Oakland County who went down to Indiana, found a manufacturer down there to create face shields. They manufactured a bunch of them and brought them up. I don't know if they ended up in your hospital, but they ended up in hospitals here in Oakland County. That's just one of a ton of efforts that are going on, the people in the community to do all they can to support the amazing work that you folks are doing.
Yeah, I think it's something that I really hope will sort of have an echo even after this crisis is over. Just seeing communities come together and think of ourselves as being on the same team. I think that's something that we haven't seen enough of lately, and I'd love to see that continue.
Dr. Malhotra, how are we doing at Henry Ford West Bloomfield?
There's a lot of ways to answer that question. From the perspective of our communities, we've got quite a number of cases of positive coronavirus in our community. That puts a strain on all of the hospitals in the Detroit and Tri-County area. But currently we are able to manage the volumes that we have. We have plans for additional surge capacity so that we can continue to serve our communities as these needs continue to pile up. We're partnering with hospitals outside of this area to make sure that we have contingency plans if needed. I think one topic that's on everybody's mind is PPE, and currently we're in good shape, but this is an ongoing concern that we have to keep in mind because the burn rate for PPE is unprecedented. Supply lines were not designed for this sort of sustained usage, and most of us spend most of our waking and sleeping hours thinking about how to make sure that we keep our team members, our patients, and our communities at large absolutely safe as we're going through this.
All right, I'm sure by now, we didn't last week or the week before, but I'm sure, Doctor, most people now know PPD is personal protection devices. And and that's a lot of different things. That's the masks we were talking about. That's the face masks that you guys are wearing. I think the N95s and others. Are there certain aspects of that supply that are? It's good to hear, by the way, that you're at least for the extreme short term at your facility, you're okay. But the governor said like 3 to 4 days. Is your supply a little bit better than that?
I think it really varies by which piece of equipment and supply that you're speaking about. But in general, I would say yes. But that is an active and dynamic situation day to day. As I said, normal supply lines don't keep up with this. So we have basically a 24/7 view of vetting new sources, new producers, new suppliers that we have or have not used previously. It's an ongoing effort to make sure that we're able to pull in as much personal protective equipment as possible. And really, I have to say that it varies day by day.
Joining us via Zoom from Henry Ford Hospital, West Bloomfield, is Dr. Manu Malhotra. Doctor, I really appreciate, I know how busy you are, I really appreciate you taking time to be with us today. We heard during the governor's news conference also that these Abbott Lab tests that give results in 15 minutes, some of them are here. Are you seeing those? Is that something that would eventually make its way to our local hospitals?
Yeah, I think that getting faster and faster turnaround testing is something that we will expect to see. Now, Henry Ford Health System has been doing internal testing now for a couple of weeks. So turnaround times that were, 5, 7, 8 days have been shaved down to less than 24 hours in many cases. It really ends up being a question of um, processing. Capacity. Um, the actual test turnaround time, the processing time itself is only on the hour of a couple of, on the order of a couple of hours. But if you have too many tests, you end up building a queue. So having shorter test time helps, but expanding testing capacity helps also. So I think we'll continue to see shortening turnaround time.
So, Governor said earlier today maybe the peak is coming at the end of April, maybe early May. I know this is only conjecture, but do you have any thoughts on where you think we are and when we might see things turn to the better?
Um, I don't think I would offer any conflicting view on that. I will tell you that I'm optimistic in almost every other moment of my life, but as a chief medical officer, it is my job to be absolutely pessimistic and consider every possible contingency of what could go wrong. So we are preparing ourselves as if this will continue for um, the foreseeable future. I believe that there are some early signs that there may be a light at the end of the tunnel. I'd be very happy to hear that and see that come true. But currently, I'm completely focused on making sure that we have contingency plans that address one worst case scenario and then the worst case scenario that's even worse than that. So um,
The great
I
thing
don't.
is we're the great thing is we're beginning to hear from people now more and more people who have survived, local people that have survived, and we're beginning to hear some of their stories. And they're it's kind of a mixed bag, doctor. I mean, in one hand, you're really glad they have survived and they came through it on the back end, and that's reassuring. On the other hand, what these patients are going through with this illness is opening our eyes, and it sounds like it's very, very aggressive. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It is very aggressive, and I think that the first week and a half of this illness really hitting our community was, I think, very eye-opening for people, as opposed to many respiratory infections that may turn around in a few days. People that are getting admitted are pretty ill, and only now that we're sort of into the last couple of weeks, we've started seeing patients getting discharged, patients coming off the ventilators, which is just really, really encouraging news because I think all you hear about is what a bad prognosis some of these situations have. But we've really started celebrating some of those real victories with patients who are very critically ill now off the ventilators
I'm
and
really, doctor. I'm really glad you took a moment to say that. Thank you, because you probably, like most of America, watched the press conference over the weekend, the national press conferences, and we could spend hours talking about those. But the president said, well, when people get on ventilators, the prognosis is very dark. Is it's good to hear you talk about people recovering. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think the only thing I would say is never in the history of medicine has it ever been good news for your prognosis if you have to be on a ventilator. It's always a pretty dire situation if you need the machine to perform the work of breathing for you. However, people do get off of that, and certainly at our hospital, we've had several people who've come off the ventilator just for this past weekend.
Well, it gives you time to work on finding a way, a path out for them. So, I, like you, I want to remain optimistic and as bright as we can during these challenging times. What do you have for the public today? Anything you'd like to share? Something that where we can help, or something we should know? Just any general information as the chief medical officer at Henry Ford West Bloomfield you'd like to share with the public?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is the social distancing. It does seem to be showing some signs of working, and let's stick with that as a community and really try to um, come through this on the other side with as few cases as possible. Be kind to each other. This is a very tough time, especially for people who are living alone. They may need help. They may just need you to reach out to them. This is everybody's scared, everybody's tense. Be kinder to each other than you think is necessary.
So, preparing for today's show, thank you, by the way. Thank you. Great advice, great words. I appreciate it. I'm going to let you go because I know you have a lot to do, but in preparing for today's show, I called a potential guest who told me they were riding their bike over the weekend and broke their collarbone. And with the hospitals the way they are, and physicians being as busy as they are keeping people alive, it's been difficult to get care. They're okay. They got the care they needed, but it was a little bit more of a challenge. What about the rest of us? I'm glad we're staying home because fewer people are getting hurt. But do you have any advice, thoughts for people that might have some other ailment other than the coronavirus that may require hospitalization or some kind of care?
Yes, we're still providing care for all the other conditions that require it. So obviously the business of healthcare is not shut down, although much of it is postponed for elective, non-emergent, non-time sensitive cases. So if you have a serious injury or an illness, you should either reach out to your doctor's office. There's a lot of options for that. For people whose offices are now closed, many are doing video visits. I know that through henryford.com, you can do virtual visits that actually can be video visits where you're actually seeing your doctor. You can contact them via a message, which are being returned within 24 hours. So there's a few different options for virtual visits. And then some clinic hours are also available. Emergency departments are still caring for every other type of emergency, although in some ways we're happy to see that people are being more discerning on what they're considering emergencies. So we've seen a lot less of minor care or urgent care type visitations to the emergency departments. But that doesn't change the fact that, if you're having chest pain, if you're having something that could be stroke symptoms, if you have something that you have a concern for, the emergency departments are still providing that care.
All right, Doctor, I appreciate it. I know how busy you are. We're going to let you go. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to keep in touch, I hope, if you don't mind. If you have anything you want to share with the public from Henry Ford, let me know. Thanks again for all the work that's going on. I know there's also a lot of research going on right here in southeastern Michigan to try to find an eventual vaccine and treatment while people are in the hospital. So I salute you, all the people in the research community. We have great hospital systems here, not the least of which is Henry Ford Hospital System. And please extend our thanks to every single person that's keeping people alive at your facility. And thanks again for joining us today.
Great. Thank you for having me.
He is Dr. Manu Malhotra, the Chief Medical Officer at Henry Ford West Bloomfield. And we really thank him today for joining us here on the MegaCast.